All right, it's a little after 7. Let's go ahead and start. Let's go ahead and start. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Let's go ahead and start with the roll call.
It's Mayor Bagley.
Here.
Council members Christensen. Here. Finley. Here. Martin. Here. Peck. Rodriguez. Here. Waters. Here. Mayor Bagley, we have a quorum.
Great. Let's say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, just a quick reminder, if you are here to speak at Public Invited to be Heard, there is a list that I don't have yet. It's either outside or it's still outside, so make sure that your name on your list, on your name on the list if you'd like to say something. If you do not get on the list by the time it comes up at the time for Public Invited to be Heard, you can still speak, but you're going to have to go at the end. So make sure you get your name on that list. Do we have a motion for approval of minutes for June 12th? Mayor Pro Tem.
I have a correction to June 12th, 2018.
Sorry, what is that?
On general item B, general business item B, number 3, it should stay instead of 50% AMI, 50% and below. AMI.
Are there any objections to the change? Shall we go ahead and accept the amendment to the motion? All right, great, let's vote. That passes unanimously with Councilmember Peck absent. Can I have a motion for the June 26, 2018 regular session minutes, please? All right, that's been moved and seconded. Okay, let's go ahead and vote. Did you want to say something? Okay. That passes with Councilmember Finley abstaining and Councilmember Peck absent. All others voting for. All right, let's go ahead and city managers, their report.
There is a report tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Sandy Cedar.
Cool. This will be good stuff. Not to say that your stuff is not good, Harold, but yes.
I appreciate that. Mayor Bagley, members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager, and I'm really pleased to introduce the people who helped us to win the All-America City designation a couple weeks ago in Denver. It was a very exciting process. I think you're going to get to meet some really cool people that helped us with this whole piece. The reason I'm starting it off is because I'm the one that started off the first application for the process, which actually asks for demographic information, for social information, a history of your own community involvement planning, and how you've used that over time, as well as a synopsis of 3 different programs that really exemplify how we take the hard issues, that we take the issues that are happening to all America cities and really try to tackle them together as a community. So as part of the application process, we're going to kind of work through this in a couple different stages. I just wanted to acknowledge a few people that helped with the application process. At the end of this presentation, we're going to bring everybody up for one really great big picture. So get your smiles ready. So as far as the application goes, Erin Fosdick and Charlotte Whitney, who is our intern, last year, ended up helping with that demographic piece. We'll have everybody up kind of at the end. The section around community involvement work and around how we really make sure that we are doing our best to include our community, engage with our community, to be part of the solution together. Carmen Ramirez and I wrote those sections. The supporting action for mental health sections were Julie Phillips and Karen Roney. The flood recovery and resiliency was Jennifer Loper and Kathy Fedler and Carmen Ramirez. And then Next Light was Scott Roche, along with little tweaks from everybody. So we turned in the application in February, and then it was announced later that we were a finalist. So there were 20 cities that were chosen to be finalists for All-America City. And then the daunting task of putting on a 10-minute presentation, which is much community as involved as possible, was upon us. Part of the reason that we applied for the All-America City this year was because it was going to be held in Denver, and some of the costs that go along with All-America City is when you're traveling to another community. So since it was in Denver, we actually were able to bring a really large delegation, some of which you'll get to meet today. So at that point, once we realized that we were one of 20 finalists for the designation, then Sean Lewis took over and helped us to write and produce our presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
And with the amazing work that the application folks had done from lots of different departments within the city with Sandy coordinating, it was then time to go into the next phase of the process of competing to really put together a visual presentation that would set us apart, that would really tell our story. It had to be all condensed into 10 minutes. And so we almost made the 10-minute mark during our presentation. We were just a little bit over, but as you can see, we were still successful in our application. But there are a number of people that I want to thank with regard to that process. First of all, we had many folks from the community, and that's what I want to focus on. Sandy mentioned some of the key city staff players. Some of the community members that we had, many of which are in the audience tonight. We had John Kello, we had Valley Burt, Sean O'Halloran, Doug Ward, Gisela Hernandez, Yasmin Renteria, and Yera Oquinda Figueroa. And those were folks from lots of different agencies in town, the Salud Clinic. You had people from Habitat that were working with us. We had the town manager for Lions, because as you recall, during the flood, we were very helpful in working with Lions. So Victoria Simonson helped with that. We also had a lot of help with the set from the Longmont Museum. So I want to especially recognize Jared Thompson and Catherine Scott, who built our amazing set that you'll see in just a moment. We also had John Rostikas, John Lovell, or Lavelle. We had Jessica Erickson in our next slide presentation from the Longmont EDP. We had some students that actually came that you'll see in the presentation that helped really emphasize the fact that Next Slide and the St. Vrain Valley School District was a good connection as well. Patty Quinones at the school district helped us with that. And last we had Scott Converse and Ron Thomas, who were awesome representing the Tinker Mill and the way that they've been able to use Next Slide. So
we're going to go ahead and show you the presentation in a minute, but after the presentation was finished, there were still more sections of the All-America City program that we participated in. One was our Civic Action Fair, where we were able to have a booth that really represented Longmont, and at that booth we had donations for people so that they could take home a little bit of Longmont. Our sponsors were LPC and Nextlight, as well as Public Works and Natural Resources, and Smuckers, who made us these cute little handmade peanut butter and jelly packets to be able to give out to people, and they were a huge hit at the fair. And they're like, oh, Longmont's getting us Smuckers? We're like, Uncrustables! Anyway, so it was wonderful, and Stacy Potter has been she's in the audience today too. She's just been amazing in helping us to really have a nice corporate sponsor for this, so that was really fantastic. After that, then we had a cultural showcase, and we decided who better to really represent Longmont than the Bailes de mi Tierra. You'll see them back here. Why don't you guys all? Woo! And they got on the stage and absolutely rocked the house. I do believe that Janet's quote was something like, we're going to show the youth how this is done. Something like that. And they sure did. So our thanks to the Bailes de mi Tierra as well.
and with that, we will play the video and then be awarded by our friends at the National Civic League who are here with us tonight from their headquarters in Denver.
Longmont, Colorado, welcome. Are you ready?
We are ready. Good morning, I'm Sean Lewis, and this is your next All-America City, brought to you by the City of Longmont, Colorado. With me today in studio is Harold Dominguez, City Manager, and Mayor Brian Bagley. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sean. I'm always proud to talk about Longmont's amazing accomplishments, even in the midst of tragedy.
And just 3 years ago, our community was rocked by a series of events that broke our heart. But we use these events to become a more caring, stronger community.
And with more on that, we go live to Longmont, where Scott Roche is standing by.
Sean, I'm here at the Safety and Justice Center in Longmont, where the city has been dealing with two horrific tragedies that occurred in close succession in March 2015. The first, a murder-suicide involving a father and son. The second, a nationally reported fetal abduction. Public Safety Chief Butler is here today to address the community.
We don't want these incidents to become another series of tragedies that go unmet without any action. We need to change the conversation about how we think about folks struggling with their mental health. Rather than see them through the lens of their deficiencies or as a problem to be solved, we need to see them through the lens of their gifts, that their voice counts, that their thoughts matter, that their humanness is valued, that they can feel safe, and that they belong to our community.
Longmont responded to Chief Butler's call for action. Just a year later, a collaboration known as Supporting Action for Mental Health, or SAM, put together an event called A Day for Grace that put these issues center stage, literally. With me now are SAM team members, Karen Roney of the city staff, and community members John Kello, Valley Burke, Dr. Sean O'Halloran, Doug Ward, and Gisela Hernandez. Karen, tell me more about what was done.
The event drew over 500 people to an off-Broadway play that featured mental health and, more importantly, hope for the future, followed by a speakers bureau, as well as a resource fair. From that, Sam organized over a dozen community conversations on mental health. 3 of those conversations were held with people in our community who spoke only Spanish, and one that involved our city's youth.
And how many people took part?
We had over 250 people take part in those community conversations, and we generated hundreds of ideas for action that we could take as a community. We selected community education and access to crisis mental health services as our top 2 priorities.
And what came from those priorities?
Well, we decided to do mental health first aid, and 2,000 residents are being trained in mental health first aid.
And this training equips more people in Longmont with the skills they need to both recognize and help people in the mental health crisis.
We also launched Let's Talk, a bilingual educational program encouraging everyone to talk about mental health.
And Scott, those conversations are continuing in clubs, families, and in our faith communities.
And has this made a difference?
Absolutely. Nearly everybody has a friend or relative who struggles with mental health or has struggled with it themselves. It helps to know we're not alone and erases the stigma.
We're joined now by community members Karen Moreno, Yasmin Renteria, and Dr. Jaira Oquendo Figueroa of the Salud Clinic. How vital is it to spread this message to all members of our community?
Essential. The stigma around mental health in the Latino community is particularly high, so we offer trainings in Español, Salud Mental para Todos.
Last summer, I participated in a youth event with my peers called 13 Reasons Why, so we can share experiences with suicide.
Yes, and we have also prepared our instructors with the training and resources to better understand gender identity and the mental health stressors faced by the LGBTQI community.
And so Longmont comes together to build a stronger community for all. Back to you, Sean.
Thanks, Scott. It sounds like you're really working hard, Longmont, to turn these mental health tragedies into opportunities for community strength.
Definitely. Showing we're a community that cares is a priority for Longmont.
Breaking news, Sean. I'm here in Longmont in September 2013, where rain has been falling for 3 days, including 17 inches in the canyons west of Longmont. With me now are city staffers Jeff Sutter, Carmen Ramirez, and Dale Rademacher. Longmont has opened its Emergency Operations Center to meet the crisis. Jeff, tell me more about that.
We use reverse 911 to notify our residents to evacuate immediately. We rescue people and pets from their homes. Our EOC and our emergency shelters were open around the clock, and they were staffed by city employees and residents from all parts of our community. Fortunately, we had no loss of life.
Bilingual employees and community members worked to ensure vulnerable populations understood what was happening. Ser bilingüe fue el puente de inclusión.
The flood ravaged St. Bernard cut our community in half. Access to our primary water supply was severed. Our treatment plant was flooded and our raw water system was destroyed. Rebuilding was our immediate priority.
Although hit hard by the flood, Longmont took the lead on area recovery efforts. Here to talk with me more about that now is Kathy Fedler of the city's Disaster Recovery Office.
More than 1,000 homes were impacted, damaged, or destroyed in Longmont, including a 50-unit mobile home park, which the city helped relocate. Almost 12,000 homes were damaged or destroyed throughout Boulder County, including in nearby Lyons, where almost 20% of their housing stock was damaged or destroyed. Longmont took the lead in partnering with the 8 other impacted communities to determine needs and fund projects. Together, this collaborative built almost 1,000 new affordable homes in 6 different communities, including Lyons, where Victoria Simonson is the town administrator.
Victoria.
Longmont has been a great neighbor to Lyons. They offered over 1,000 displaced residents housing for 3 months. They opened their schools and offered meeting space for our town hall. They also coordinated over $7 million of our recovery efforts. And Habitat for Humanity was also a great partner.
Habitat built 8 homes for flood impacted families. We also repaired 23 homes. We're currently building 6 homes in Lyons. We couldn't do it without the great volunteers from the Longmont and Lyons community.
What has Longmont learned from the 2013 flood, and what steps do we take from here?
What we've learned, Scott, is that our actions have to be environmentally sensitive and resilient as we work to protect people and property and infrastructure in the future. Our river project is going to remove from the floodplain over 500 structures that include mobile homes, senior housing, and many of our local businesses.
We also identified barriers for our Spanish-speaking residents and made recommendations to build Resiliencia para Todos, resiliency for all. We found that bilingual teams and cultural brokers are key connectors. Our findings serve as a model to help other communities consider everyone in their planning.
We confirmed our belief in the power of community to help each other. Faith groups like mine, the United Church of Christ, along with LifeBridge, provided over 3,600 shelter days, helped with interim housing, and rebuilt 42 homes.
And so Longmont rises above disaster, showing that with leadership and working together, they can build resiliency for all. Back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Scott. Mayor Bagley, you must be very proud of this community.
Absolutely, Sean. In Longmont, we come together and support each other. We overcome in a crisis, but not only that, we do great at planning ahead.
I assume you're talking about Longmont's new fiber optic network that provides access to every home and business.
In fact, I am, Sean. Years ago, we were upgrading our communications network with high fiber electric broadband. We have 18 miles of fiber optic loop, which could easily, at the time, we understood that it could be converted into our citywide network. So our citizens went ahead and passed a $45 million bond, and we were well on our way to becoming the fastest internet in the entire country.
With more on that, we go to Longmont Power and Communications, where Scott Roche is standing by.
Sean, I'm at the LPC call center, where folks are calling non-stop to become NextLight customers. With me now is Jessica Erickson of the Longmont Economic Development Partnership. Jessica, tell me more about this new service, NextLight.
Thanks, Scott. NextLight is a city-owned fiber optic internet service providing gigabit download and upload speeds to both homes and businesses, all without contracts or data caps.
And what does this mean for Longmont?
Well, it means the best of the internet is available to everyone. For businesses, it means the ability to move massive amounts of data. At home, it means family members have simultaneous access to high-speed internet, and at some of the lowest prices in the country.
And I understand this has a huge impact on the schools as well. With us to talk more about that is Patty Quinones from the St. Vrain Valley Schools.
Yes, St. Vrain launched a really ambitious technology plan that includes iPads for middle school and high school students. We're really excited because St. Vrain also had NextLight be supported in all of these devices. We now have 10 times more bandwidth and over 100,000 per year that's now available for more school programs. Every Longmont student, regardless of income level, now has equal opportunity to enhance learning and gain essential 21st century skills, drastically eliminating the digital divide.
It's awesome! Everyone in our schools has super speed internet now. It looks like Longmont is moving to the head of the class. I'm joined now by Scott Converse and Ron Thomas from the Longmont makerspace, the Tinker Mill, who can tell us more about what NextLight has done for job creation.
Well, Scott, businesses don't just come to Longmont to be at the cutting edge. They also start new ideas at Tinker Mill that are really driving exponential innovation.
Amazing. From Colorado's first geek city, I'm Scott Roche.
Thanks, Scott. Mayor Bagley, did NextLight live up to that early promise?
Did it ever. Now, more than 50% of our residents have NextLight, and not only that, we have the highest, fastest speed of internet in the country, including Google, and now other communities are calling us to ask how they can do it.
Folks, it looks like there's some amazing work going on in Longmont. Longmonsters, any closing thoughts?
As one, together, Longmont, unidos, juntos como uno,
Longmont.
Thank you for indulging us there. Oh, how do I stop this? Who knows what that's going to be? But as you can see, we have some really talented folks. I just want to point out that I missed one meeting in this process and ended up having to do that anchor. I did not just volunteer for that.
And Grammarly makes my writing better.
As a student,
There are a couple of people that were behind the scenes that were amazing throughout the whole thing. Tamara Teveres in our Public Works Department, who had done this before, coordinated before, was very helpful throughout the process. Susan Wallach, who was our videographer, our timekeeper. Marika Unger, who was helping behind the scenes the whole time. And Carrie McKinley Tovar in Community Services, who was really our logistics coordinator. So we wanted to recognize them as well. Last but not least, we want to recognize the president of the National Civic League, Doug Linkhart, who's here, as well as Sarah Lipscomb, the program director for the All-America City Awards program, who are going to officially present us with the award mayor. So if you can come forward to accept that once they've said a few words. And then we want to have everyone who participated in any part of the whole program to please come down front and we'll take a big picture. Doug or Sarah?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Sarah Lipscomb, the Program Director of All-America City Award. We have Doug Linkhart, the President of National Civic League. And we're so thrilled to be here to re-give you all your award. And the All-America City Award was established in 1949 to recognize 10 cities each year for excellence in civic engagement. There have only been 530 communities around the country who can claim this status, and there are only 2 cities in the state of Colorado, including Longmont, who have claimed the status twice. So we congratulate you all on valuing resident input over the years and promoting equity in your community. We look forward to seeing the successes that you all have in the future, and also will continue to hold you up as a national model. So thank you.
Thank you.
Again, congratulations. We're really proud to have a neighboring city to our headquarters. And 500 cities sounds like a lot, but when you consider there are 19,000 cities in the United States, and only 10 won this year, you should be proud. Thank you for all you do.
Come on, Council. Come on, Council.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, sure, sure. Our thanks so much to the National Civic League for the work that they do in really creating social equity and really talking about community engagement and involvement as the best practice.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. My name is Janet Liu. I just want to take a few minutes to thank you all, the City of Longmont, for inviting Ballets de Mitera to perform. We were so excited about this invitation. You know, we feel very, very honored as well and very proud that we could do something for the city. And as you can tell, our group is a very diverse group, and we promote cultural diversity as the mission of the city. And also, we also promote the health and wellness among all residents, especially 55+ seniors like we are. And if we can keep ourselves healthy and active, that's a pretty good city to be as a resident in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the special reports and presentations. Another one. The presentation of the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting Award for the 2016 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Mr. Golden, congratulations.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, I'm Jim Golden, the Chief Financial Officer. It's just an accounting award. I don't feel like we should be following that, but well, the city has once again achieved the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This one is for the year ended December 31st, 2016. The certificate represents the highest form of recognition for excellence in state and local government financial reporting, and it's a significant accomplishment by the city, its management, and its finance department. Longmont's received this award for 37 years in a row. In order to be awarded the certificate, the government must publish an easily readable, and I'm sure you all read through it easily since it was in your packets, only a few pages, right? Easily readable, efficiently organized, comprehensive annual financial report. This report must satisfy both governmental, generally accepted accounting principles and applicable legal requirements. Financial reports that qualify for the certificate provide a detailed vehicle by which market analysts, investors, potential investors, creditors, and others may assess the attractions of a government's securities compared to other governments or other investments. So in a close bond rating call, the availability of a CAFR meeting the certificate requirements can make the difference towards the positive side of the scale. Sidebar, we did just receive this week or yesterday ratings on our open space bonds that we'll be selling next month. From S&P, we received an A rating, and from Moody's, we received a A1 rating. So tonight, we're accepting the Certificate Achievement Award, and we are also presenting the GFOA Award of Financial Reporting Achievement to the city's accounting division. And Deanne Hansen is the accounting manager. She is here tonight to accept that award. And I also have the plaque from the GFOA to present as well to the city and the mayor for their certificate achievement. So if you want to grab your certificate there for us, we can have another
Want to
photo.
trade?
Sure.
All right. I just want to point out that he brought his own plaque. You're on it. Come on up, council. Please.
1, 2, 3. Thank you.
All right, before we move on to first call public invited to be heard, just one thing that I skipped over. Does anyone have any agenda revisions or submission of documents or motions to direct the city manager to do? Are you done, Mr. Golden? I'm sorry.
There's another item, actually.
Go ahead. The floor is yours
Do
still.
this first? Okay. All right, so the next item actually is the presentation of the city's Longmont Comprehensive Annual Finance Report and Independent Audit for 2017. So we kind of always coincide these two presentations at the same time so that we can take the glory for last year's CAFR being put together. And we are now presenting to you the CAFR that we put together for 2017. And we have tonight with us from our auditors, Clifton Larson Allen, Paul Niedermeyer, who is the partner that's in charge of our audit. He's going to, in a couple of minutes here, present the audit reports from Clifton Larson Allen. Just wanted to just give you the highlights we put together in the council communication, the major highlights for the 2017 CAFR. Point out management discussion and analysis is in the beginning of the report, and it's a really good approach for the layman's approach to take a look at the performance and the financial position of the city as of the end of 2017. Then you'll have pages and pages of financial statements, both combined type statements as well as individual fund type statements, and a number of footnotes that also support the financial statements. We wanted to bring to your attention within the communication the significant fund balances, or the fund balances for the significant operating funds of the city. I'm not going to read those to you, but just point out that those are available to you. For the government funds, we have fund balances. For the proprietary funds, we have working capital balances reported in there. And also we kind of break down and identify what the components of the general fund balance are and what makes up the different aspects of that fund balance, the non-spendable portion, the restricted portion, committed portions, assigned portion, and unassigned portions. We've got information in here on the defined benefit pension plans. The city has 3 of those, and identifying the amount of assets that are being held in trust for those 3 plans. And then we have some significant footnotes here as well on both pensions and investments, and a number of other areas of the city's financial statements that would be of interest. So with that, I'm going to ask Paul to step up and address the council on the auditor's reports.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Paul Niedermuller with the auditing firm Clifton Larson Allen. So I know you have a lot of information within your packet, so I'm going to briefly summarize that information. The governance communication is basically the Cliff Note version. Without going through the several hundred hours that it took to complete the audit, as well as the countless hours for the staff to prepare this report, we're going to give you the Cliff Notes in terms of what happened in your responsibility surrounding governance. So we have prepared a report. There is nothing of substance to report in terms of disagreements, anything not being able to get the information, no difficulties encountered performing the audit. From your perspective, that is very, very good news. We did have a few journal entries that we posted, again, through the several hundred hours that we did, and those are listed within this report. Accounting is not an exact science, and we outline some of the estimates that go within this financial reports, as well as our summarization of the estimates used by management. Again, nothing of significance. Page 21 of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report is the opinion. We get a couple pages within your report, and we're happy to report you received an unmodified opinion. For those keeping track at home, that is a clean opinion. So that is the best opinion you can receive. So in all material respects, the financial statements are fairly presented. Very, very good news for city and council. The final thing is, and we talked about the floods, and you're still receiving flooding money, and those come with tremendous amount of strings attached. And there was $33 million worth of federal funds that you're a recipient of, and your stewardship surrounding that is required to be tested by an auditing firm. Happy to report for the current year, there were no findings or recommendations as a result of your recipient of federal funds. Again, a tremendous testament to the compliance requirements that was upheld by the city of Longmont. So very, very positive news. In the back of the report, we also list out any financial statement findings, and we did not have anything of material or significant compliance. There are a couple comments that have been addressed and discussed within your packet surrounding best practices and things that can be improved upon, and we have highlighted those within your packet. At this point, we would be happy to address any questions from council as your independent auditor.
Dr. Waters, do you have?
Yeah, actually, it was signaling the item that we went past early on. But I noted, I think there were two of the findings, non-material. First of all, I would say, having seen lots of audits and been around this, to have an audit this complex with this many transactions and not a single finding is pretty extraordinary. So very impressive. So Jim and the financial staff. Of the two findings that I am thinking about, one was a journal entry. The other was updating software, I think, to keep track of assets, if that's clumsily worded. Mike, I was just curious about what we're going to learn or what we think we might learn. The note was, the response from management was that was scheduled. There was a scheduled review. And I was just curious about what there is to learn through that review.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, so we have new software, relatively new software that's been in place for a couple of years now, and we have been experiencing some issues with the fixed assets portion of that program, and so it has caused us to have to make some major adjustments, particularly in the audit that we had for 2016. And again, there was what was identified by the auditors for 17 was another problem that we're finding with that software. And so what our staff is trying to do is identify what's causing that to happen. We think it has something to do with how we're loading information into that about the individual assets. And so that's having an impact on the depreciation of some fixed assets. So that's what we're hoping to do, is identify what's causing that so that we don't repeat that in the future.
And that response, I assume, was satisfactory from the auditor's perspective. It certainly is from mine. So.
I won't speak for the auditor, but okay.
And that response was satisfactory from the audit firm's perspective.
Anything else?
No. Any other questions from?
No, not that I see. So thank you very much for your work. And Jim Golden? Yep.
Thanks, Paul. Just one more acknowledgement. I wanted to acknowledge the accounting staff. The last few audits have been really hard since we put this new software in place. Our timing has been that changes, like our new payroll system, come into play this year when we're trying to do an audit and put together a CAFR. And we lost a key member who had a lot of experience at the same time during that audit. So this has been a tremendous effort by Deanne Hansen, the accounting manager, as well as her staff. I wanted to acknowledge our lead accountants, Ben McDonald and Sammy Coulson, did a great job of putting this CAFR together. A little later than we like it to be, but we believe it's still in good shape. So I am done.
Great, thank you. And I'm going on my 8th year, and I'm very impressed with your skills. And you are one of the very talented, and the day you retire, I worry. So thank you very much.
Mayor and Council, if I could say something. I think he understated when we talked about changing the software system. This was the fundamental system for our organization that handled all of our financials, our human resource system, our pay system. And over the last 2 years, it has coincided on top of the audit function. And when you're changing your payroll system and trying to make sure that folks are getting paid, and we hear the horror stories of other organizations that have done it and they haven't been able to cut checks, and they've had to backtrack, and the fact that we went through this, and there was some pains but not a lot, and they got this work done. That is a tremendous statement to the work that that everyone put in on a regular basis to get this done. It was a monumental task on the software side, and when you combine that with the CAFR, they really, really took a lot on their shoulders and performed admirably and did great work.
Great. Thanks, Harold. All right, let's move on to, actually, before we move on, are there any agenda revisions, submission of documents, or motions to direct the city manager to do anything? Dr. Waters.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I had shared this at our Friday morning meeting. I'd received some correspondence from the bicycle community in Longmont with some concerns about how we designate or don't, or how we enforce codes with respect to obstructing bike lanes. And in the follow-on to that, in some correspondence with Sean, which I appreciate his responsiveness, it strikes me that there are some revisions that are going to require updates to our ordinance. So I'm going to move that we direct staff to review the ordinance and bring back any recommendations that we need to consider to increase safety for our bicyclers in bike lanes.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Let's go ahead and vote. And that passes unanimously with those council members present, with Councilmember Peck absent. Valerie, you're in the queue. Do you need to say something?
Yes, I just need to remove item 8C entirely from your agenda. It'll come back, it may come back later after they do some contract revisions.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I would like to move to direct staff to provide information and an option on a rebate program concerning sales tax on food for food purchased for home preparation/consumption.
I would second that as well. Any additional comments on that? All right, is there, okay, well, I guess the, let's go ahead and vote. What the heck? That also passes unanimously with those members present, with Councilmember Peck absent. I guess before we get into public invited to be heard, I guess the only question I have is, when do we plan on talking about the prairie dog ordinance? When's that? What agenda is that coming up on?
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. So the prairie dog ordinance, as I understand the priorities of council, is coming after inclusionary housing. Inclusionary housing, I imagine, coming back probably mid to late August.
Okay, which means that we'd be looking at sometime in what, late August to September? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Any additional comments, questions, and concerns from council on his response? Mayor Pro Tem?
I do have a concern that we've heard about spraying going on out near the Mill Village, that is near daycare centers, that is poisonous spray, and no warning is given to the community at all, no warning is given to the daycare center. And I'm wondering if we could have an update from the police or the city manager about the legality, well, and of course, Eugene, the city attorney, about the legality of any kind of spraying. I mean, when the city sprays, we do notify that we're spraying for mosquitoes and things. I think that if anyone's spraying a large amount of poison around, whether they're on public or private, there needs to be some kind of notice. So.
I have a feeling we're going to get an update. Dr. Waters.
I appreciate the response, Eugene. I thought we were going to do this sooner than that, but I understand there may be capacity issues. As I went back and reviewed the memo we got from Don back on May 16th, I think, or I guess the opportunity for public comment was posted on May 16th, with a June 1st deadline for collecting public comment. So I know there were a number of responses. Am I the only one who hasn't seen those? Is there a place on our website that I'm not finding my way to see the public comments?
I'm not sure on that, but I can work with Dawn to make sure that we get that out to council.
Yeah, I'm just curious about what we've heard, and I understand there are legal issues. I also know that, or I understand that Don, as he listened to our guidance, took an approach to drafting that reflected the input. That there might be other considerations, but if they didn't come up in that initial round of input, he didn't try to get creative with it, just to reflect our input. And since then, as we've learned more or heard more, and I'd like to have a chance to see the public comments, should we just sit with Don? It wouldn't reflect council guidance. That's my concern. You know, I don't know that I wouldn't want Don drafting an ordinance with Tim Waters', concerns. They ought to reflect council concerns. But I do have some thoughts and some concerns that I'd like to see, and it might accelerate, if we're going through a legal review, and we're not going to see this for a while, we'd like to expedite that process when it gets in front of us, right? That we will have been as inclusive as we can be with input. So if we wait till then to get input, then we're still dragging it out. So I'd like to figure out how to take what we've learned from the community, have another round of input with Don, and however we need to do that. But I think just doing it individually probably is not going to reflect the will of this group.
What I think we can do is send the information we received from the community to the council. There were some really good comments that were made that Don did make note of as he was looking at it. And he can note that in that information to council that may or may not address some of your concerns or all of them. And then I guess council could, I've really got to think of the next step. I think you could provide feedback back to Don, Joni, and myself, and then we could assess it and then potentially come back with specific questions to council related to that. Again, council was very specific in the direction they gave us, and so we were trying to be true to that specific direction and not deviate from that.
Okay.
And you're always willing to talk to Don. I mean, you can sit down and talk to Don if there
I've
needs
done
to
that,
be
and I
more
appreciate it. He's very responsive. I just, as in our Friday morning meeting, I shared what I had learned from urban wildlife manager in Boulder as a way to create some incentives legally that don't get crosswise with the state. I think this is what Boulder's doing regarding if it's necessary, the kind of remedy. I know I'm going to inflame somebody's view here about when you can't relocate the prairie dogs, what the options are. But the most humane way to do this, and creating a financial incentive through habitat, not replacement, and it's not even, reclamation. I don't know, the habitat fee as the incentive. How do we get those ideas, which don't reflect any conversation we've had here?
Well,
but should.
I think as I stated in the meeting on Friday, one of the questions was an incentive-based approach, and that has been something that I've talked to Eugene about that'll really be involved in the legal review of this. Specifically, and I'll look to Eugene to see if I misstate this, but I've said, so is there a way to incentivize folks to, because we know state law has expressed preemption in terms of what they're doing, my question was, is there a way to incentivize folks to utilize carbon monoxide versus the other substance that I just dropped? And so that is a question that's been pushed into that process, but I think if you have any more, I would be happy to sit down and talk to you. Dawn can talk to you. It may be that the attorneys need to talk to you if it starts going more into that legal world.
Well, I'll just state again what I stated on Friday. It's loss of habitat fee, right? They charge
Correct.
$1,200 or $1,500, which adds up over, depending on the size of property, thousands of dollars, which they've never collected because the option is to use carbon monoxide if necessary, and then they'll waive that fee.
Correct.
Seems like a smart approach for us to have reflected in our own ordinance, those ideas.
Okay.
Anyone opposed to actually taking a few minutes on Friday morning to actually we read the comments beforehand and just have, yes, that would be a good idea, or yes, you object? Mayor Pro Tem.
I don't object.
Okay.
I agree. I think it would be a good idea.
Okay, so then if we could just, maybe in the next Friday morning session, it'd be informal. That would allow the public to show up, take 3 minutes for public invited to be heard, listen to our conversation, and we can kind of get things out on the table and say what we do and do not like, and maybe save a lot of time by just doing it that way. All right, that said, let's move on to first call, public invited to be heard. Let's go ahead and start with our very own Mr. Jeremy Gregory.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, thank you so much. First of all, I want to extend my condolences to Councilmember Peck and her family as well. So, thank you for preemptively bringing that up, because that's why I'm here, is to talk about this ordinance. Jeremy Gregory, 238 Sweet Valley Court, Longmont, Colorado. I just want to stress that this ordinance is more than just protecting a keystone species. A properly written ordinance will protect, by extension, other crucial flora and fauna, especially in this community. Mill Village has been subjected to months and months of Category 1 poison being injected into it. This has affected the spirit, morale, and quality of life by those of us who live here and nearby. We were told mid-July, that this was going to get passed by several city staff members with decision-making capacity. Now to hear that we're looking at August or September, just out of principle, there aren't going to be any prairie dogs left. Because we have people that just hate these things, that hate the sentient life. And for example, Steve Strong, one of the developers responsible for authorizing the dumping of this poison into Mill Village, who also acted unethically by circumventing laws so he wouldn't have to humanely relocate prairie dogs to a chosen site open to receive prairie dogs, is being rewarded by the city with a prospective development that will further adversely affect the quality of life of Mill Village residents. It is appalling that due to certain language in our codes, residents do not have a voice on this development. This is undemocratic. Please let your constituents who care about these aforementioned issues know what you plan to do about this. I would like to be there on Friday. Susan Summers and I and others have been working tirelessly to get to this point. I know that prairie dogs may not be high on the list for some of you, but it is for many of your constituents. So I'm just imploring that we get this thing passed sooner than later. Thank you.
Susan Summers.
Hi, Mayor Bagley and Council. Susan Summers, 1418 Galilee Lane in Longmont. I just wanted to say I voted for all of you, and I didn't vote for you guys because I thought that you were going to pass a prairie dog ordinance. I voted for you because I truly believe that each one of you possess the commitment and desire to make Longmont a better place, not only for humans, but for the non-human inhabitants. And I also voted for you guys because I think you're all committed to protecting our environment. And as elected officials, there are a lot of issues that are going to come up. I know you're heavily burdened with things. I know you don't have a lot of time. That's kind of the nature of your job. And I know it's probably a thankless job a lot of times. I want to thank you guys for the work you've done on the prairie dog things. I know you've gotten a lot of feedback on it, and I know some of you are probably tired of it. But with that having been said, it's an important issue, like Jeremy said, to a lot of constituents, and it's important that you guys continue to balance issues that might not be politically weighty issues, but they're important to the people of this community. And I implore you to find the time to sit down, as Mayor Bagley mentioned on Friday, and go through these comments and thoroughly delve into this code, because there are a lot of very confusing elements here. And there were a lot of extremely good comments that were made, some by the Prairie Dog Coalition, sent in some excellent comments that I implore each of you to really investigate. A special thank you to Councilman Waters for taking the time to call Boulder and delve into how their policy works and how maybe we can make some of those aspects of it work here. So as I understand it, from talking to Don Burchett today, the code has been in the legal department for in excess of 3 weeks now. And I know there are a lot of other important things, the inclusionary housing, but this is important too. And I think we need to do a good job of balancing the time spent on all of these issues and somehow, you know, breaking it up so each thing is getting dealt with versus just putting everything aside for one issue that might be close to somebody's heart and important, but there are other things too. So I, again, hope that you balance what we're doing. I'd like you to encourage legal to move this through more quickly. By September, if it were to get passed, it's exceedingly difficult, if not impossible, to start relocating prairie dogs that time of year. I mean, it's important for us to get this done while we still have a chance to save any of them. So that's all. Thank you.
Tim Pickens?
Mayor Bagley?
That's all right.
Mayor Bagley?
Yeah.
May I just let you know, let folks know that it's not this Friday that your work session is
Right.
scheduled, it's the following one.
Right.
Thanks. I got to talk on you guys this time. My name is Tim Pickens. I'm mayor and city council. Listen, the traffic, I live at 917 Sunset, right there by the high school. There's 2 yield signs right there across the street. The other day, I was telling this guy, I was going up there, and the guy must have been going 50 miles an hour. He just waited at me and went on through. And there's 2 yield signs I pointed at him. He just like, well, no big deal. But anyway, if you get to any intersection, no matter what it is, if you get a walk sign, you better be looking to your left, because people, they treat a walk sign like a go sign. I don't know why, but they do. I lived in Longmont for 48 years, and it's really got bad. But there ain't too much I can do. You guys might think about putting up a no right turn sign on the intersections.
What was the intersection you're referring to, sir?
They're all that way.
Okay.
Pretty much all of them. Excuse me, I was on View and Main Street about 3 years ago. And I looked across the street, and there was a police officer just sitting across the street, but he was looking at some other crap in a truck. He just pulled across there and he almost got me. So I was like, man, this is ridiculous. The police are sitting right there watching this. It's like, oh man, okay, this ain't safe. I've only been in a wheelchair for 20 years. I ain't too fond of it, but you know, that's the way it is. Something's got to be done about traffic. I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, sir. Nick Mott?
Haven't used one of these in a long time, so thank you for letting us speak up here. I wanted to talk to you all about Mill Village as well. My concern is more about the apartments that are being proposed to be built there. I don't know how. I'm not sure what the word is, 100% if they're coming or not. We've got 800 apartments that are already going up, 300 that are there, another 500 that are going up east of us. I don't know why we need to get another 300. That's going to be 3/4 of our neighborhood surrounded by rentals. As I understand it, there's going to be, or there was, zoning that was supposed to be business, light industrial. It was on the comp plan. There's a zoning ordinance that's been allowed to change that law, rule. I'm not sure the wording on that. And as a result, we're getting more apartment complexes. My concern is that our neighborhood's going to be surrounded by rentals. We're already pretty congested. We got 500 more units coming in. That's going to be another, I mean, roughly 1,000 cars maybe. It's hard to say the numbers. All of it's an estimate. I'd like to know if there's anything that we can do about it at this level to prevent that from happening, maybe get it to where we have owners and not renters in there. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mott. Sarah Levison.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley and Council. I'm here with the Untaxed Food Ballot Initiative, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of information on some figures and financial analysis that we've done. I know that Jim Golden has estimated that the general fund, that the revenue coming from food tax that covers everything, about 64% would be basic groceries. And so that we're estimating for the 2019 budget that would be about $4.5 million. Just to give you an idea of what that figure means, tonight in additional allocations to the budget, you're going to add $4.2 million just to the general fund tonight. So when you look at that in that perspective, it's not as big as impact as you would think. I also want to point out that when I was on council during the recession years, in fact, the first budget during the recession, the 2009 budget, Councilmember Santos and I sat down and went through the budget line by line and then sat down with directors. I know that there's always a few $1 million that can be cut from the budget and have very little to no impact on city operations. I also want you to consider that besides the marijuana tax that will be coming in, and things that the marijuana tax would pay for are coming out of the general fund currently. We also have the new source of revenue from increased sales coming from the internet. With the Supreme Court decision in South Dakota versus Wayfair, we will see a remarkable increase in sales tax revenue at the local level. According to the Tax Foundation, a nonpartisan think tank that deals with tax issues and analysis in Washington, D.C., they estimate maybe 80% of state and local taxes are being remitted. So that extra 20% is going to be a significant source of revenue. The other thing I would like to point out is that while this change to how we collect taxes may be thought of by some to be a benefit to wealthier people, in reality, this is the most regressive form of sales tax. If you're lower income, you're doing more than 15% of your income on food, you're eating at home 66% of the time. Your top 20% of wage earners, you're eating at home only 51% of the time, and you're spending about 10% of your income on food. The state of Arkansas repealed or rolled back their state sales tax on food, and during 2007 they started, and then 2009 they further reduced the state sales tax on groceries, and in that period, by 2011, the analysis was that they went from 48th in the nation per capita to 44th. And remember, those were the years during the recession. So something as some people would think not significant can actually raise per capita income.
Thank you, Councilmember. Paul Tiger. Mixing it up.
Paul Tiger, 350 Kimbark. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to thank Aaron for moving the conversation along. By doing that, we'll be able to see some of the figures that we really haven't been able to. Our award-winning finance department will get some rock-solid numbers for us. Because in order to do a rebate program, you'd need to know that, and we'd all get to know, and I really. So this afternoon, Sarah and I had a podcast with Paul Weissman, who used to be both a state senator and our House rep. And one of the things, actually the topic was communication, how to communicate with your representative once they've been elected. And we see that right now. I also heard that what I was getting there was that there was a feedback mechanism that perhaps didn't really work well. And the state right now is working on a feedback mechanism that works, that actually follows something that Ron Tupa has done called Digit Demos. And that is you can keep up with your legislator on what issues that they're voting on. People should take a look at Digit Demos and what the state has done. And that might have benefit here, where citizens can keep abreast of the issues as you guys are working on them, rather than following up or catching up and then coming down to comment after the fact. So just some thoughts. Thank you very much.
Brian Johnston.
I didn't know that council member Peck wasn't going to be here. I'll wait and do mine later. It's not of particular significance tonight anyway, so I'd rather wait till I have a full crowd.
Or
and do it at a later time.
It might be much later.
That's fine.
All right. Okay. Strider Benston.
Greetings, Mayor Bagley, City Council. I'm Strider Benston, 951 West 17th. There has been so much really hitting our country every day for the last year or two, but especially the last week or so. I was going to go into that, but I'm glad I can drop a lot of it. But one thing in particular I just learned, I think it's called MDM, a new private prison company. Probably our Attorney General, who represents the Ku Klux Klan, is invested in it because he's heavily invested in private prisons. They just got a $345 million contract, I think, which we have to pay for to build more private prisons, baby prisons. And 1 week after getting that contract, the Attorney General, Sessions, passed the zero tolerance policy. So now starting in prison thousands of children and stuff. We are known to be a nation of immigrants. That's very interesting what's going on. And now the person who calls himself president is heading off to Brussels, perhaps to destroy NATO, and then go talk to his boss in Russia, Mr. Putin. But anyway, let me get off of that. I am so happy that here in Longmont, we are actually functioning democratically. We don't all agree on everything. I support prairie dog survival, and there's all kinds of stuff. I support the untaxed food and such. The bicycle thing, be aware that in the wintertime, they don't plow the bicycle lanes. They leave all the ice there, and then you have to go out and get hit by a car. I'm real thrilled that Longmont is functioning as a democratic city, and let's try to teach the rest of the world and learn from them how to do it right and to not get into this hatred game that is starting from the top of our country right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benston. All right, we doing okay? Is what a break? Are we doing all right? Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to consent agenda and introduction and reading by title of first reading ordinances.
Mayor Bagley, your first item is Resolution 2018-68, authorizing a loan from the fund balance in the city's fleet fund to the open space fund and providing for repayment of the loan from the open space fund. Item 8B is Resolution 2018-69, authorizing the Longmont Historic Preservation Commission to act as a reviewing entity for the state income tax credit program for qualifying rehabilitation projects under state statute 3922-514.5 as amended. Item 8C has been pulled from your agenda. Item 8D is approved 3 capital improvement program amendments, and staff does not need to pull any of the items for presentations.
Great. Are there any council members that would like to pull an item? All right. Seeing none, can we have a motion? Councilmember Martin.
I move the consent agenda, not including item C.
It's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes unanimously with all council members present. Councilmember Peck is absent. All right, ordinances on second reading and public hearings on any matter. Let's go ahead and do ordinance 2018-29, a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the city of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2018. Staff is here with a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Teresa Malloy, Budget Manager. And you may have noticed that this is a fairly significant appropriation, and therefore I do want to just highlight a few items for you. So total appropriation is $146 million, just a little over that. It includes 33 different funds. It is broken down into carryover dollars, which makes up the bulk of the appropriation at just over $105 million, and then another $40 million of new dollars. So I do want to go through a few things with you in both of those categories. I'm actually going to start with the carryover, and I wanted to let council and the public know that our city charter, per our city charter, all of our appropriations in all but one fund, and that's our public improvement fund, lapse at the end of the year. And therefore, if we have not completed the projects that were budgeted in a prior year, we need to bring to you an appropriation to carry those funds over. So that is what the bulk of this appropriation includes. You're not going to see the public improvement fund in this appropriation because those funds legally don't lapse. They're funds that we can continue to use without an additional appropriation carrying them over. So out of the new funds, on the second page of the council communication is where we identify the new dollars. I did want to point out just a few items for you. The first one is our BRB 004 project. That is our broadband fiber construction installation CIP project. So that's adding an additional $1.8 million to that project. So that's new dollars. In the CDBG and home fund, we've got another significant amount of new dollars being added. A good chunk of that, $28 million, is a IGA amendment that you all saw in April for the Boulder County Collaborative Program. So that's $28 million, new dollars again. And then the rest of those are grants. At the time that we were putting our 2018 budget together, we didn't know what our actual grant awards would be in our CDBG fund. Well, we now know that, and so these dollars are appropriating the difference between what we estimated and what we will actually receive. And then in the open space fund, there's your $8.3 million for the bonds that you have heard about previously. So those are the big new dollars. The rest of these are really just carryover of projects that were budgeted in 17 or even prior, but not completed at the end of 17. And we have another requirement in our code that says we cannot award a construction contract, a contract, without having the full budget in place to do so. And so that, even though we know that we won't complete these projects in a given year, we have to budget for them all up front and then carry these funds over. So many of the carryover dollars are related to CIP projects, and we have identified those as such. So we do have quite a few staff members here that can answer specific questions if you have them.
I don't see anybody in the queue, so thank you very much. All right, are there any questions from council? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and open up the public hearing on ordinance 2018-29. Seeing no one, let's go ahead and close the public hearing. Can we have a motion? Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I move ordinance 2018-29.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. From the council members present, that passes unanimously, and Councilmember Peck is absent. All right, no items removed from the consent agenda. Let's go ahead, and how long will the open space master plan update and adoption take? Let's take 5. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get going again. That was a good, solid 5 minutes. My fault. All right, let's go ahead and turn it over to our beloved city staff to talk about open space.
Mayor, council members, Dan Wolford, Land Program Administrator for the city, and I'm here to present to you the Open Space Master Plan update. As I was just talking to Chris about, I was looking at the proposal today that Greenplay provided for this, and it was dated September of 17. So we've been going through this process for quite a while. Initially, it was intended to be a 6-month process, get in, get out, be to you. Well, that didn't quite happen with the public process and some of that kind of stuff. So this is an update, so it's not a new plan. And you know, throughout the process, we've had a variety of public meetings, technical advisory team meetings. We did 2 separate surveys that went out to, almost 5,000 people, got a 16% return on those surveys, so we got a good snapshot of that. We did a presentation to the Parks Board as well as the Board of Environmental Affairs. Actually, I did a presentation for the Longs Peak Water District about the master plan so that they can see what kind of infrastructure they will be needing maybe in the future. Again, this is an update, the same format that we did the original one, and the Parks Board has recommended adoption of this plan. The reason we did an adoption is because the original update or the original plan in 2002 was adopted. So we're moving in that direction. Some of the quick recommendations that are coming out of it is we believe we're doing a great job, and I believe the community through the survey is saying we're doing exactly what we asked you to do. We're going to continue to prioritize acquisitions over some of the development, but they want to make certain that we're managing and maintaining those areas that we're acquiring. We really need a law enforcement and an education component that's kind of missing. And we probably need a little bit better PR program to really kind of pat ourselves on the back and let the public know what's going on. Those are big things that you know, have been identified in this process. At this point in time, I'm going to turn the program over to our consultants, Greenplay LLC, and Chris Drapinski will be providing that presentation to you. You will see the PowerPoint presentation, which I think you already heard about the Cliff Note financial process. Well, this is going to be the Cliff Note version of the master plan update. A couple other things that we decided to do is, in an effort to not continue to confuse the public, the original plan included a trails component in this. Because we have Envision Longmont and we have a Parks and Recreation and Trails master plan, we didn't believe it was necessary to put a third trail component in yet a third plan. The other thing that we believe is the better thing to do, the next time the Parks and Recreation Trails master plan is updated, to incorporate that open space element into that plan so that we have a more holistic approach of addressing recreation and the natural environment in a more holistic effort. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Drapinski. Chris is a principal with Greenplay LLC. I've known Chris for over 35 years. Prior to going to Greenplay, she worked for our large metropolitan park district in Lakewood and in Littleton, and was a former Parks and Recreation Director for the city of Boulder. So I think she knows her Parks and Recreation a bit. She was also the lead on the original plan back in 2002. So with further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
And let us start with offering you condolences. 35 years of Dan, that's...
Well, you know, I was only about 8 years old when we met. Chris Drapinski, Greenplay, we're headquartered in Louisville, Colorado, and it's really an honor to be back working with the city of Longmont on a plan that has been, by virtue of going through this process and really understanding how successful it's been over the past couple of decades, so people have really validated where the original direction went. So as Dan said, this is kind of the Cliff Notes version that was done to provide enough information to the public that they could use this as a good update.
Chris, I'm sorry to catch up. Could I really get you to lean in there? The paper's doing this, so it means they can't hear.
Okay,
so
you bet.
Scream.
I'll just get closer, that'll work. I'm going to give you the highlights off of each of the slides so you don't have to feel like you've got to comprehend everything that's there. So, you know what's there already. We started with a technical advisory committee, as Dan alluded to, and that was really a diverse team of people that included city staff and county staff and the consultants. And we also had a member of staff from the Sustainability Evaluation System, so we made sure that that got included into this update. We had public workshops in February and March, and quite a few people came out to visit, and I know there were some council members there as well. And the community survey that Dan already talked about, we got quite a bit of information in. We did both a by invite survey that got the response rates that Dan talked about, and then also opened it up so that anybody in the community who wanted to participate in that survey could do so. And we got another 312 responses through that, so it was very good. As Dan said, with the trails issue, there were also other issues that kind of cross over between plans within the city. So we made sure that there was alignment between Envision Longmont, the sustainability plans, the multimodal transportation plan, and the Parks and Recreation Master Plan in particular. So that was all taken into consideration. Essentially, as far as the values and visions that underlie the plan, there weren't really any changes to that. There's just a refreshing of the language and updating how that's talked about in the plan. So nothing real of change to mention there. And the same with the goals that were, again, just updated, a good validation that the program was on track. Here are some of the survey responses that came out, and I'll just mention a few of them on each of these slides. The acquisition of open space remains high priority for this community. That's what the public had to say. Although they did begin to acknowledge now that you've got to have a focus on management and maintenance. As you get more lands in there, it takes more of an effort to take care of those. So in terms of how funding is used in the future, you need to start shifting a little bit more that direction. There's still a strong emphasis on protecting native areas, on balancing the preservation and protection of those areas with outdoor recreation. As far as the ranking of the importance of the open space for this community, 4.5 to 5 on a scale of 0 to 5. It's very, very important to this community. As far as needs being met, a little bit lower, still above average, but it's at 3.7. There is interest by the community in renewing the open space tax that's out there. It was renewed not long ago to go out into the future, but with the demographic change that's coming and what people seeing the need is going to be in the future, they're saying, we're still not sure that's going to be enough, so keep your eye on that. 74% said, yes, renew that open space tax again at least its current level, but 3 out of 5 said even at an increased level, we're interested in that. So take a look at that when the time comes. We showed this, this is about the values and vision statements that are in the plan and what people, how important they thought those priorities were. What I really want to point out on this slide is the similarity between the invite survey and the open link survey. So there was a lot of commonality in how people saw those values and vision statements that are elements of the plan currently. When it came to what you would want, I guess narrowing in on that, what you really think is the emphasis you'd want to prioritize for use of the open space funds, a little bit more emphasis from the invite survey on an equal balance of protecting and preserving the open space and outdoor recreation. And the open link, a little bit more emphasis on the land preservation and protection part of it. That's common to see that with the people that tend to be more engaged. They're represented in that, that survey of we want that preservation to occur. So in balance with the recreation. As we move forward into the next question, this had to do with in thinking of how the money is used in the future as we continue on forward. The maintenance of open space properties is what shows up with the strongest response at the top here. The lightest blue on the left represents people saying there's too little or not enough as we go forward. We're concerned about that. The lighter blue, they said, nah, I think we're okay with that. And then on the other side, people either said that little dark blue band, there's too much, or they don't know, the gray band. So a lot of interest in, again, what's the future funding going to look like for this program in order to keep it what it is today. This next slide, again, it talks about too little, not enough, or just right, and the biggest light blue and medium blue bands on the left represent over 70% of the people, indicating that we're not sure there's going to be enough when it comes to preserving for the development of even passive recreation and the acquisition of open space parcels. So lots of interest. This was a graphic that came out of the survey. The little blue dots on the three-quarter diagram there, that's where the survey responses came from. So they were pretty well balanced throughout the Longmont community. Below that, in the right bottom corner there, indicates where people said open space should be acquired. And we thought it was interesting to note that it wasn't that everybody said, where I live is where I want you to acquire it. They said, we want you to acquire in these areas. We think that there's probably less interest in that south area because there's more open space around that area in the south, and more interest in the northwest and the middle there, that 27 and 21%, those areas, because that's where the water is, and people tend to think of water and those areas near water for open space lands. So that's just kind of an interesting piece that came out of this. As far as the draft recommendations, we had put in place acquisition criteria when the plan was first put together. And so a strong message, continue to apply that open space criteria as you have in the past. It's working for you. Keep your eye on the evaluation of a future ballot initiative, either continuing as it is currently or an expansion of the dollars available through that. As far as trail acquisition and development, as Dan said, as we didn't put a huge focus on that in this plan because it's addressed in some other plans, but some of the recommendations that came out of this really were that the open space funding should be used to connect open space trails that are on open space, let's say within a particular parcel, or connect one open space to another open space. If they are on open space, avoid sensitive areas, so just be sensitive to that, and keep a check on social trails. So social trails are those that develop on their own. They aren't part of the plan system, and inventory them, determine which ones should be closed or attended to and which should be validated as parts of the system. As far as management opportunities, park rangers are felt to be very important for protection and for visitor services, and that becomes even more so as the community continues to grow. The use of volunteers, that continued use, because you're using them now, that's really going to help in terms of stewardship for the future and support for the future. The continued focus on vegetation, weed, and wildlife management, relying on science-based management, and then combining the future plan updates with the Parks and Recreation and Trails Master Plan updates. So do them all as one. It was surprising, well, not necessarily surprising, but it was interesting how many comments people made that they ended up saying, well, this is what I believe and think, but I'm not sure. Is that a recreation issue or is that an open space issue? So they don't always know the distinction, so bringing these together seems to have a lot of merit. As far as signage, just quickly, there was interest in making sure that people knew what is open space, what are the Longmont open space parcels, to make sure that they're signed well, and that the signage would follow the guidelines that are already established for signage, so nothing really new there. But sort of taken a system-wide approach to signage. It happens a little bit more ad hoc now, where needs are really show up, so a more comprehensive approach to that. As far as policy, one of the big things was the lack of definition of what is low-impact recreation, what is passive recreation. I can tell you this is a question, it's all over the country. It's not just here in Longmont. So we tried to come up with a more formal definition for low-impact recreation, and certainly where there is minimal development that occurs, and you certainly want to emphasize preservation and not disturbing what's there. And having things that occur that don't have a lot of rules and engagement, so there's not a lot of coordination and scheduling and bringing people to the site and heavy use. So we try to put some language around what is low-impact recreation. There's some language that was actually in the first plan about what specific activities are, and that's what really this slide is about. Just provides more of that definition. And then we got into dog management. And essentially what this says is designate clearly the areas for where dogs can be no dogs off leash, dogs on leash, or no dogs allowed altogether. Be very clear about that, make the rules clear, create mapping so that people can have that at their fingertips and know where it's okay to do what as far as their dogs go. As far as wildlife, again, the emphasis is on maintaining the ecosystem, allow coexistence with wildlife and humans whenever possible, but improve existing habitats in degraded areas. And as Dan just mentioned to me, he's already starting an RFP process for wildlife management plans to begin this fall. So that will take care of the more detailed part of where are the wildlife, how do they need to be protected on a site-by-site basis. As far as agriculture lands, most of the lands that you have in the system that are open space lands dealing with our agriculture are supporting the viable farming operations, and they tend to be on the outskirts of town. There was interest in, we bring more internal to the city and have areas that could be used for the more smaller types of operations, whether they be community gardens or things like that. That's where it starts to roll more into the parks and recreation end of things too. So something to have an eye on, but work in coordination with the Parks and Recreation Department there. In terms of gravel mining, as staff has been doing now, they're trying to get the rights to what is there whenever possible. Obviously, it's not always possible to do that, but if not, then just following the city code. That's what they have been doing, and we'll continue forward with that. Where there is gravel mining taking place already, monitor it, make sure that it's happening according to the plan it's supposed to be happening, and then communicate what's going on with the public so they have an understanding of what's allowed on the different sites. So as far as long-range management and maintenance costs, this goes back to the focus or shift toward management and maintenance and exploring the extension of the tax in order to make sure that that happens in a viable way. So think about now what's needed for the future so that the legwork can be done and things are in place when you need them. As far as area management plans, again, aligning with other planning efforts, but those plans are more specific, they're site-specific for what happens on each parcel. It's not really possible to have these broad brush management plans that affect every parcel that you have of open space because they are all so different. As far as awareness and education, this was one area that probably could use some beefing up by the department, and just knowing and understanding more about the open space system and communicating that to the public so that they know the value of what is there. What we did this time around in the plan is we actually wrote some sections that have to do with the economic and other benefits of having open space in your community. So we put that in words so that people could have that at their fingertips and have a better understanding of what the whole open space program is about and those specific benefits. And then as far as updating the plan, again, the more holistic approach when it's time to do it again, looking at Parks, Recreation, and Trails and Open Space Master Plan as one document, again, in line with Envision Longmont, the Sustainability Plan, Multimodal Plan, and those other things that are happening. So that's really the presentation tonight, and we're happy to answer questions from the council members.
I don't see anybody in the queue, but I've got to go, actually, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I talked with, well, anyway, The questions I have mainly to do with, I think this is a great plan overall, and it's a really good update of everything. I think it's got a lot of great detail. My questions have to do largely with agricultural lands, which there's a very good article in the paper, very good editorial in the paper yesterday by Brian Copham, who's the director of both the Longmont and the Boulder markets, farmers markets. And in it, he was explaining the difference between preserving the appearance of agricultural lands and the reality of agricultural lands. And it seems to me what we're doing is we're giving a lot of lip service to that, but the actual purpose of agricultural lands and the reality of them are very different from open space, and yet we're trying to, with the Envision Longmont plan, we're hollowing out all farming within the city limits of Longmont, which we say we're not doing, but we actually do seem to be doing. And we're putting them on the outskirts on open space. But open space is actually almost the opposite of agricultural land because, you know, agricultural land is a commercial enterprise. It's dusty, it's noisy, it needs buildings, it needs workers, it needs many, many things. It doesn't need to have people trotting along there with their dogs and rabbits running around through the fields. So I do see that this is kind of colliding in the future. And I think that there are solutions, but I think it would be a prudent and positive thing for us to have a small committee of farmers that could be like an advisory committee to interact with the city staff for this. And I know that city staff does talk to farmers all the time and work with farmers, but I do think it would be a good idea to actually have an advisory board that does deal specifically with agricultural issues in the future, because it isn't really on the, although clearly open space, a lot of it is agricultural, it's not mentioned anywhere in the executive summary or the open space as anything. It's never mentioned. So it's really sort of an afterthought. And it just seems to me that it would be a prudent addition to have a small group of advisors.
All right.
That would be my suggestion.
Okay. Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I was intrigued, but by the suggestion of bringing urban farming on a small scale into the city, and it was not clear to me from the presentation how much planning there is around that. When I saw that, I thought of the St. Vrain Valley School District's Community Strong initiative. And it seems to me that if there isn't already a plan about urban agriculture, that working one out with the school district as part of that initiative would be a great thing for the area. So could you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole issue of agriculture sort of taking both pieces into there. The initial attempts, I think, was to protect the cultural aspects of that for Longmont. So what was there to be protected would get protected, and I don't think there ever was really an effort to let's create something new inside in these areas that's not there right now. I think the way that we see it is that this is it's not solely an open space function. But that's where the two efforts need to come together and say, hey, we've got a space or we've got some land somewhere in the Longmont system, not necessarily open space and/or parks, but maybe somewhere between them, that there may be some potential to do something like that. But I think it takes that conversation to occur as these move forward.
Dr. Waters?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Two questions. I suppose everybody got some input from at least one resident about some language to item 4 on the gravel and mineral rights slide. So would it surprise you if I referred to some correspondence? Is this something that you've seen or not seen?
Well, it was spoken about, I know, at the meeting with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We actually changed the language here as far as.
So let me just,
Sure.
I know this is probably not fair to read something to you and ask you to, because there's a lot of words here, but just the general idea, just a reaction. So this, it struck me as worthy of at least consideration, input from a resident suggesting that number 4 would be worded something like, communicate the risks and benefits of development on open space lands to the public. And then an additional sentence, explain how, if approved, the city will regulate and monitor said developments to help ensure that city expectations and the best intentions of said developers are carried out. Just kind of an accountability, keeping the public informed and some accountability for everyone involved is what is reflected in those words. A reaction to modifying in some way, I suppose that language may reflect concerns or fears that people have about what happens with development on open space lands, and this would be language to try to allay some of those. Is there a reaction, good or bad?
Mayor, council members, certainly any development on the open space programs goes through a public process. So there's always that opportunity, whether it's, as we bring those kind of types of things to council or any of the advisory boards or the Environmental Board of Affairs, those are certainly opportunities for comment on development. Typically, when I think of development, it's going to be irrigation improvements, or it's going to be a trail, a regional trail connection that comes through open space. And certainly, we don't take those lightly. And if you take a look at the process for Union Reservoir or Lake McIntosh from a trail development perspective, it's a huge public process. The last thing we want to do is not to include that. We want to be very transparent in the processes that are going on. The same thing with any of the oil and gas development that's going on, making certain that the general public understands what's going on. We want to make certain that the intent of those acquisitions, if there are intentions like the Golden Farms property where there's intended to be gravel mining in the future, that we're out front in front of people, very transparent, and they see what's going on.
I'm just guessing that the input here is more likely tied to the second half of the heading on that slide. And some assurances for the public that it's both benefits and risks, and and the rest of what was suggested here.
Can you repeat that again, just so I can?
Communicate the risks and benefits of development on open space lands to the public, and then an additional sentence. And explain how, if approved, the city will regulate and monitor said developments to help ensure that city expectations are and the best intentions of said developers are carried out. Some of that language is reflected in.
I have no problem with it. I mean,
I think it's worthy of consideration. I don't know what the reaction of the experts will be to. Well, gee, that creates some other set of some burden on the staff. I don't know, but I think it's worth considering.
Sure.
I don't think it does. I think typically that's what we would want to do anyway.
Yeah.
Is to say, here's the risk, here's the opportunity, lay it out.
I'll share the language if you haven't received it, and then.
I think if council wants to include that, then we would just need that in the motion in terms of.
Did you all get that same correspondence? Yeah. Does anybody have a concern about it?
Well, only that so the previous council, and I'm going to channel Councilmember Peck for a second. We passed a city policy saying that for all our open space, we were going to be always looking for a partner to enter into, so that it would limit the potential for the city to develop in any way on open space and to preserve it. And so the one thing that came to my mind while I was hearing this, I think that needs to be in here. Because I mean, it's policy, we voted on it, I don't know if it's written down anywhere. But I think that the city policy on open space needs to be, we look for Colorado, or the Department of Wildlife, U.S., Colorado departments, whatever, City of Boulder, Boulder County, whoever, so that we partner in with them. And even if they or us or whoever decides in the future to do something silly, that they can't. That would be my solution to that. My proposed solution.
Two different issues.
What's the issue?
So one is the conservation easement. I think what you're referring to is a conservation easement. If in the future a council 10 years from now wanted to divest themselves of the property, then there would be someone else holding a conservation easement that would have to agree to that.
Well, I'm also dealing with, for example, let's suppose we own the mineral rights and somebody wants to allow pit mining or gravel mining. If the city wouldn't be allowed to do that. And so I don't know, but finish your thought, Harold.
So depending on how the property was purchased and I'm going to ask David to sneak up behind me, but depending on how the property was purchased and what was in those purchase agreements at the time, because some of those properties, I believe, they held certain rights. And so I think that's where this conversation comes in, where if, let's say theoretically, they held the right for the gravel mining, then the risk and rewards of that would have to then be laid out for the community, because that's not something that we received in the purchase. Now going forward, the conversation has been very specific for staff to try to get all of those things. But then we always get into negotiations of.
Understand.
So Mayor, Council, David Bell, Natural Resources Manager, and I guess I was called up to say you're right, Harold.
I wanted to make sure I wasn't,
good job,
wasn't
Harold. You're
wrong.
right.
When we're doing acquisitions, we really try to make sure we can get as many of those rights as possible. We're always looking for willing buyers and willing sellers. And when we get into those situations, we have to give up something. We have been including, the no surface agreement, or if you want to access, you have to do it in a way that's beneficial to the city. So again, our goal is always to try to get those rights, but sometimes we just don't, and that's when we would need to go to this second piece. Dan, is that?
Right on the money. And the other question I had was, I can understand if we own the mineral rights, could we stop them from gravel if somebody, or if they wanted, can you force pool gravel pits? And so, I'm pretty sure it's oil and gas development that can you? I'm just curious. Here comes Dale.
From a gravel, I've never heard it from a gravel perspective.
I don't know. No, it does not
Oil
flow.
and gas doesn't flow. And that's what we did.
So Mayor, this was going to be a 30-minute discussion, but so
You'd
oil
force
and gas.
Pit, by the way, you'd force pit. You wouldn't force pool.
Yeah, oil and gas is very different because the extraction of that is one where the force pooling does come into play. Gravel mining is not.
Okay.
If you don't want your land mined, you don't have to lease it, assuming you have acquired those mineral rights, that you have the mineral rights for the gravel.
So I guess my question then, the only other question I have is, if the policy is going to be acquire the mineral rights, what is the purpose? Meaning you can't really stop them from drilling if they really want to, right? So if we own the mineral rights for oil and gas, what would the purpose be?
A couple of things. I believe we want to buy the entirety of the property, number one. That's always our goal. And that has historically included everything. That includes the historic water rights, that includes the mineral rights and so on. And so being the owner, you're correct, Mayor, being the owner of, say, the mineral rights when it comes to oil and gas exploration, as we all know, does not necessarily preclude the development of those rights, even over your objection, if you are included in the drill spacing unit. That, however, can change over time. That is probably subject to change at the state level with state law. And so as the holder of that mineral right, it puts you in a better position to have a say on it, if you will, as opposed to no say at all.
Cool. Thank you.
Let me just come back to item number 4 on this list. that could be interpreted, I suspect, as we're doing a sales job on the benefits of development as opposed to a more balanced presentation. I think that's the concern. So I'm going to forward the language. I think it's an improvement, whether it's all the words or just enough to balance this out, that it's both the benefits and the risks associated with development. A more broad question, and then I'll be quiet. You've done a great job, and I've had a chance to see the presentation as part of PRAB and attended one of the workshops. So good on you for what you've done. And it sets up for, and this is my ignorance now, in terms of what's the next step. I assume all this translates into, Dan, you setting priorities for 2019 that are pulled right from the plan for you and your team. And you made reference to education and law enforcement as new or emerging priorities. And so there would likely see objectives in 2019 that would reflect those priorities. Is that fair?
Mayor and council members, that's correct. I think you'll see in the budget request for 2019, there are a number of positions for law enforcement. Speak up. I can't get this thing closer. So there are positions in the budget for next year requesting law enforcement. With the volunteer coordinator that we now have on board, there's a hope that we can put together a citizen bike patrol that would be more of an education component on our greenways. Certainly with the efforts that we have on working with outside groups on volunteer efforts and trying to encourage land stewardship, those will be priorities as they are today, as they will be in 2019.
So you could predict my next statement or question would be, how will we evaluate the effectiveness of implementation? And you don't have to answer that now, but I'll be curious as we get toward 2019, not just this, but other plans, and we get to implementation. How are we going to evaluate how good is good enough, and the progress we've made, and what do we learn as a result, and all that kind of stuff. So.
Well, and I can vouch for Dan. Those requests were actually presented to me today as we were in our budget hearings.
Mayor Pro Tem Christensen.
So going back to number 4, what Councilman Waters said is exactly how I felt when I was reading along, and I thought, well, this all sounds very good, very, very reasonable. And then I thought, what? This is like communicate the economic benefits and intention of these opportunities to the public. It does sound like a sales job for the oil and gas people. And so I do think that it would be good to amend the, I realize though that what you guys have in mind is just to be transparent about the reality of the situation. And so I think it would be better to at least insert the economic benefits and risks and intentions of these opportunities, I guess you can call them. But yeah, I do think it would be good to just tinker a little bit with the wording. Thank you.
Dan, did you want to say something?
Mayor and council members, I think one of the biggest issues here is maybe the choice of words in number 4 in development. I mean, that was not our intention, is to look at oil and gas, or what we see as development may be, for instance, the nature area that's being developed along the river and providing shelters and an adventure playground, that level of development. However, I could certainly understand where you're seeing oil and gas or gravel mining as a development, but that has not been our intention. So again, I have absolutely no problem with including that risk component associated with that, but our intention is really, again, providing those passive recreation opportunities or developments that would be pivot irrigation system that would enhance the agricultural production of a property.
I guess I'd just suggest maybe just saying upside, or communicate the upsides and downsides of the opportunities to the public regarding all development. So you take out economic altogether, and it's just, you just do a simple analysis. Anything else? Chris?
Not for me.
All right, great. We've got nothing left in the queue, so thank you very much.
We
Mr. Bell? And Mr. Wolford?
Mayor and council members, we are asking for adoption of the plan, so a motion may be appropriate.
And when you make the motion, the two pieces that were brought up, one, the language change, if you can say to generally include that language into your comment about incorporating the policy that was set in terms of the conservation easements, if we can have that in the motion.
I just move that we alter the draft as written to include this city policy. We will continue to seek out partnerships that will prevent future commercial and residential development on our open space or sale thereof.
And do you want the other one?
Why do we have to do it just do it one at a time? Yeah. We got a first and a second. Let's vote. That passes unanimously by the council members that are present, with Councilmember Peck absent. All right, there was another one, another change, you want to make that motion, Dr. Waters?
Sure, I'll move that we amend the language to number 4 under gravel mining and mineral rights / oil and gas development. I'm not going to dictate the language, but we include the concept of risk and accountability, right? So I'll share the language we have here, but the final draft would reflect those concepts.
All right, let's vote. That passes unanimously from all council members present, with Councilmember Peck absent. Do we have a motion to adopt the draft recommendations as amended? Councilmember Martin?
I move to adopt the recommendations as amended.
Second.
All right, seeing no further discussion, let's vote. Again, that passes unanimously from us present, with Councilmember Peck absent. All right, let's move on to final call, public invited to be heard. Oh, sorry, board and committee. Well, okay, Councilmember Martin, calm down. Oh, I'm sorry, David Bell.
Mayor, council members, I did just want to say thank you to council for all the effort they put into this process. I know people showed it at public hearings. They've got input from the public. Your time tonight, what I've seen that you guys have really invested into reading this document. I want to thank our consultant Screenplay, who really have done a great job bringing a lot of information to provide it to you tonight. And with that being said, even we did get the memo. We had called Chris at the last moment and said, hey, we just got an update on how we need to do our slides and our presentation. So I think Chris did a really nice job at trying to condense that down, make it public record. There's a lot of information there, and keep it quick and concise. Wanted to thank Dan. Even as we were going through this process and hearing the public saying you're doing a great job, we want you to continue purchasing. Dan's been going through, I think, 6 acquisitions, working on getting our bonds available, working with the partners at Boulder County, actually closed on the Harper property. So this has been kind of a great piece of work he's been doing while he's doing all the other pieces of it. So again, I want to thank him and all the people that worked as far as our technical advisory group, in-house, our city staff, Boulder County and Weld County. So again, thank you everyone, appreciate it.
Thank you. This is gonna sound like when my kids say, hey, look, Dad, I got an A in science. Well, how's social studies? How's the newbie property?
It's coming along.
Coming along? Okay, good. Good job, guys, thank you. All right, now let's move on to board and commission appointments.
Mayor Bagley, members of council, I'm Valerie Skitt, your city clerk, and you have some ballots in front of you for each of these boards. I'm going to walk you through the boards one at a time. So the first one is the Airport Advisory Board. You have one unexpired regular term ending in December of 2019. You have 2 applicants. Wow, vote for one. Councilmember Waters voted for Harrison Earl. Councilmember Rodriguez voted for Harrison Earl. Christensen voted for Scott Stewart. Martin voted for Scott Stewart. Bagley voted for Harrison Earl. And Finley voted for Harrison Earl. So Harrison Earl received 4 votes. and we'll get that position. The next one is Art and Public Places Commission. There are 13 applicants. You have 5 regular member terms. Let's do those first. If you'll vote for 5 individuals, we'll try and get it close or get it narrowed down.
Oops. Thank you, Harold. You're gonna miss this, Val, aren't you?
No, probably not. Thank you.
It's all right.
Thank you. Start in the middle this time. Mayor Bagley voted for Peter Alexander, Amy Mann, Randall Green. Gotta find him on my list. Randall Green, Andrea Mathwich, and Francis Parker. Councilmember Rodriguez voted for Amy Mann, Wendy Stewart, Laurel Alterman, Cynthia Tiger, and Susan Horowitz. This one takes a little longer. Councilmember Finley voted for Amy Mann, Laura Alterman, Robert Glassner. Let me find that one. Randall Green, and Francis Parker. Okay. Councilmember Martin voted for Peter Alexander, Amy Mann, Candace Newcomb, Francis Parker, and Cynthia Tiger. Councilmember Waters voted for Peter Alexander, Amy Mann, Laura Alterman, Robert Glassner, just a second, and Francis Parker. Okay. And Councilmember Christensen voted for Amy Mann, Candace Newcomb, Robert Glassner, Francis Parker, and Cynthia Tiger. Okay, so we have 2. Amy Mann received 6 votes. Francis Parker received 5 votes. And then we have 3 others that received 3 votes.
Who are they?
We have 4 others, I'm sorry. Peter Alexander, Robert Glassner, Cynthia Tiger, and Laurel Alterman. You want to take a second vote, just those, including those? Yes. Robert Glassner. I'm sorry. Peter Alexander, Robert Glassner, Cynthia Tiger, and Laurel Alterman. We need to take a second vote with just those 4.
Well, there's 6. I move that we actually, I move that we appoint all 4 to the board with us voting on who should be the alternate.
Well, first vote all 4 of those people. Peter Alexander, Robert Glassner, Cynthia Tiger, and Laurel
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Alterman.
for the unexpired term, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez.
So you want those 4? Did you all
Well, that was
understand
the
those
motion
4?
is, yeah, the motion is to, I move that we appoint these 4 to the board and we vote on who receives or who is to be appointed the unexpired term.
You will have to raise your hand to vote on that. If you got a, did you get a second to that? Finley, did you second that?
Yeah.
Okay. You can vote on the alternate on the paper if you want, but do you want to vote on that motion to appoint all 4 of them?
All in favor? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
I didn't see the hands because
Yeah,
it
okay.
didn't look unanimous, so 2, 4. But
That is what they call peer pressure. What? That's all
okay,
right.
so of those 4 now, Peter Alexander, Robert Glassner, Cynthia Tiger, and Laurel Alterman, you will need to vote one of those for the unexpired term that ends in 19, and the other 3 will get the longer terms. So
Or just one X. One
just
X.
one X.
Just one X.
Against one of those 4 names. Yes, Peter Alexander, Robert Glassner, Cynthia Tiger, Laurel Alterman.
Or not the alternate, the unexpired term. It's just a little bit shorter term.
These are all regular members, you're correct, okay.
Mayor
So-
Pro Tem is the only vote that's anonymous. The Mayor Pro Tem is the only.
Okay, for the unexpired term, we have Cynthia Tiger. Christensen voted for Cynthia Tiger. Waters voted for Cynthia Tiger. Rodriguez voted for Cynthia Tiger. Martin voted for Cynthia Tiger. Bagley voted for Cynthia Tiger, and Finley voted for Cynthia Tiger. So she will get the unexpired
Great
term, which
minds,
ends
people.
2019.
Great minds. Just want to say
Okay.
that.
That was quicker than I anticipated. So Board of Adjustment Appeals, you have 1 position, 2 applicants. One of those applicants has also applied for the Senior Advisory Board. No, I need to keep those so I can make sure my count's right.
Sandy, we're out of pop in the fridge. Not a 1. Not a 1.
Councilmember Rodriguez voted for Mark Flower. Councilmember Waters voted for Mark Flower. Finley voted for Mark Flower. Martin voted for Jennifer Tarrant, or Janine, I guess it is. Christensen voted for Mark Flower, and Bagley voted for Mark Flower. So Mark Flower will get that Board of Adjustment and Appeals. Board of Environmental Affairs, you have 3 positions and only 2 applicants.
I move that we appoint Kate Collardson and Violetta Manukian to the Board of Environmental Affairs. Anybody, all in favor? Opposed?
Okay.
Done. Next.
Cable Trust, you have 4 applicants. Vote for 1 for the regular term ending 2021.
This is regular.
Yes, let's go with the long term first, and then you can go the unexpired term.
Okay.
Councilmember Waters voted for Scott Converse. Rodriguez voted for Scott Converse. Christensen voted for Scott Converse. Finley voted for Scott Converse. Martin voted for Scott Converse. And Bagley voted for Scott Converse. So he will get the 2021 term. Now vote the second time for one of the other 3 for the 2020 unexpired term.
There's a lot going on tonight. Look at all them. We got a lot left.
Bagley voted for Philip Huff. Finley voted for Philip Huff. Martin voted for William Decker. Rodriguez voted for Philip Huff. Christensen voted for Philip Huff, and Waters voted for Josh Redmore. So Philip Huff will get the unexpired term 2020. Okay. Downtown Development Authority, you have 2 regular terms ending in 2020 and 2 applicants.
I would move that we appoint James Wardell and Thaxter Williams. Let's vote. Passes unanimously.
Okay. General Employee Retirement Pension Board, you have 1 citizen at large and 1 employee term. The only citizen at large there is Gordon Pedro. The other 3 are employees. So
I move that we appoint Gordon Pedro as the citizen at large, term ending June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Let's vote.
Who seconded that?
Mayor
Okay.
Pro Tem.
Okay, then the other 3, you have 1 position, so if you'll vote for one of the other 3.
It's about time you pull your weight, Eugene.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Finley voted for Becky Doyle. Martin voted for Becky Doyle. Waters voted for Becky Doyle. Rodriguez voted for Becky Doyle. Christensen voted for Jennifer Loper. And Bagley voted for Becky Doyle. So Becky Doyle will get this employee position. Then the Library Advisory Board, you have 1 position and 4 applicants. Councilmember Martin voted for Betty Dunbar. Finley voted for Mark Springfield. Waters voted for Mark Springfield. Rodriguez voted for Mark Springfield. Bagley voted for Mark Springfield, and Christensen voted for Mark Springfield. Okay. Master Board of Appeals, you have 1 applicant, and we have a lot of positions open, so.
I move that we appoint Jerry Boone as the unexpired regular term, or member term ending December 31st, 2020. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Passes unanimously.
The MOPC Board, 1 position, 2 applicants. Vote for 1, please. This is
It's like playing Pokemon. Get your cards ready to go. I'm sure you do.
Councilmember Finley voted for Eric Mason. Waters voted for Eric Mason. Christensen voted for Eric Mason. Bagley voted for Eric Mason. Rodriguez voted for Eric Mason. And Martin voted for Wes Lowry. Okay. Eric Mason. Museum Advisory Board, you have 3 regular terms and 5 applicants if you'd vote for 3.
Wes Lowry what? Did he? No, Wes is a good guy. I only voted for Mark because he was on it. Wes did a good job when he was on the board.
Councilmember Waters voted for Dale Bernard, Eve Lacy, and Christina Carlson. Bagley voted for Dale Bernard, Eve Lacy, and Rhea Moriarty. Finley voted for Dale Bernard, Eve Lacy, and Christina Carlson. Rodriguez voted for Eve Lacy, Rhea Moriarty, and I'm sorry, but Nanjundaya Murthy. Martin voted for Dale Bernard, Eve Lacy, and Nanjudaya Murthy. And Christensen voted for Dale Bernard, Christina Carlson, and Eve Lacy. Eve Lacy received 6 votes, Dale Bernard 5, and then nobody, of the remaining 3, nobody got 4 votes. So you'll have to vote one more time for the remaining 3. So vote 1 for one of those individuals. Christina, Rhea, or Nanjundaya.
Christina, Rhea, or Nanjundai?
Thank you. Christensen voted for Christina Carlson. Bagley voted for Rhea Moriarty. Martin voted for Christina Carlson. Finley voted for Christina Carlson. Waters voted for Christina Carlson. Rodriguez voted for Christina Carlson. So she will be the 3rd appointee. Senior,
that was more of a social
Senior
experiment.
Advisory Board, you have 2 applicants and 1 term, so vote for 1.
Senior Citizens Advisory Board?
Councilmember Martin voted for Janine Tarrant. Waters voted for Janine Tarrant. Finley voted for Janine Tarrant. Bagley voted for Steve. Rodriguez voted for Steve. And Christensen voted for Janine. So that's 4 for Janine Tarrant. Right. Then we have Transportation Advisory Board. What was included in your packet showed 5 applicants, but there's only 4 on your ballots because I did not know that Daniel Wilson had asked for his name to be removed, so your ballots are correct. So there are 3 regular positions if you were, if you want to vote for those first.
I move that we appoint all 4
Okay.
to the Transportation Advisory Board, and for us to vote on the 1 person who will be filling the unexpired regular member term ending June 30th, 2019. Yeah, let's vote. So, yes, okay. Now that passes unanimously.
So vote for 1, and they will get the unexpired regular term.
Doesn't really matter. You're all awesome. There we go.
Okay, Councilmember Finley voted for Rebecca Parrott. Martin voted for Rebecca Parrott. Bagley voted for Neil Lurie. Christensen voted for Jackson Wood. Waters voted for Rebecca Parrott. And Rodriguez voted for Jackson Wood. So nobody got 4 votes.
Anybody mind if I change my vote? I'm going to change my vote from Neil to Rebecca.
Is that who you voted for?
Yeah.
Okay. So Rebecca will get the unexpired term.
If nobody objects. I was just trying to make it easy.
Okay. Let me just make a note there. Okay. Water Board, you have 3 applicants and 1 Councilmember Rodriguez voted for Roger Lang. Christensen voted for Roger Lang. Waters voted for Roger Lang. Finley voted for David Swenson. Martin for Roger Lang, and Bagley for David Swenson. So Roger Lang did get 4 votes. And then you have the Longmont Housing Authority, and I picked up the wrong sheet, so I'm not sure. There's 1 position, and you have 3 applicants
So
that you have interviewed. You have 3 applicants you still need to
All right,
interview.
so here's my question before we vote on this. Technically, state law says I appoint. I'm willing to listen to your recommendation. My question, I was there on Friday. I thought we were going to, I know we've got 3 other applicants scheduled for interviews. I'll do what you guys want, but do we want to wait to interview those final 3 applicants? Okay. And then, because I wasn't there for the interviews. Go ahead, Dr. Waters.
I'm comfortable following through with these 3, but I've also said I don't think we should stop. We have 3 more applicants. We should schedule interviews. So we're not starting from scratch the next time there's an opening. That we've interviewed and we would keep it open and build some bench strength. So,
Mayor Bagley, I believe your rules of procedure say that for every time there's an opening, we have to reopen the application period.
Right.
So if there is another opening in a month, we would have to reopen it again. You couldn't just take from the ones that you have just interviewed.
Right, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that, yeah, right. So, I mean, we've got 3 people, that's what I'm saying. We've got 3 people who are scheduled for interviews that if we vote tonight, we dismiss them. So, I mean, we can vote tonight. I honestly, leaving it up to council. This is not a hill I want to defend.
the 3 we interviewed had met the deadline initially. If we had interviewed and if I felt like we didn't have a worthy candidate, I'd say let's keep it open. But I think we do.
Can you guys just tell me then, but instead of just voting on this, what were your thoughts? I mean, who you thinking? Who was the candidate? I heard that there was a candidate that you guys all liked. Who was it and why?
Could I first say I liked all 3 candidates?
Okay.
They're all good people. I mean, as we go through this.
Yeah.
But
who shined?
And why? I'll defer to others. I just want to make certain everybody knows.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I think that. Sorry, I think that we all felt there was a need to actually elect somebody sooner rather than later. And I think we have one really outstanding candidate who has a great deal of experience and is also a resident, which is something that we actually have needed because we have been out of, well, I'm not sure that this is in compliance with Colorado law, but generally it's a very good idea if you have over a certain number of units in your community to have at least one member who's a resident. But this person also has terrific qualifications in understanding authorities because she's worked for housing authorities before.
And that was Jean Christopher?
Yeah.
Does anybody not think it should be Jean Christopher? Is that who you guys were thinking?
I'm abstaining, I was not present.
Okay, all right, Jean Christopher.
So do you still want to continue on with the interviews, even though you know you'll have to reopen it if another position comes open?
What do you guys think? I mean, we're going to reopen it anyway. We just filled the spot.
We can certainly hold on to those applications.
Let's just hold on
let's
and
do
interview
that.
them. Let's do that. Let's just hold on and interview them
Okay,
after.
okay, we'll call the applicants
So
tomorrow.
does that satisfy you, Eugene, what we just did? We're all good, right? All right, cool. All right, that's it for board and commissioner appointments. Now let's go ahead and have final call, public invited to be heard. Sergio, do you want to come down and say anything on behalf of Scott Converse and his new board appointment? No? No, he hasn't texted you. Hey, go tell him this. No, okay, all right. All right, let's go on to mayor and council comments. Mayor Pro Tem.
I wanted to say something about Robert Peck. The day after Independence Day, Bob Peck, who was a loving and devoted and very patient husband of Joan Peck, and a wonderful father to Sean and Jeff, and a sweet grandpa to Hudson Robert Peck, left this earth. Bob was intelligent, funny, kind, and wise. He did a lot for this community and county, both as a father and a husband, but also in his work and in his career, his voluntary activities for Hope and the Probation Board, and numerous other quiet but very, very useful activities. Bob faced his very painful death with incredible strength and courage and grace. He will be sorely and very deeply missed.
We don't take votes or motions at this time, but would you guys mind if we put this something like that in a resolution for fellow member, council member Peck, as a council? Can we have consensus on that? Could staff just prepare something? Thanks. Councilmember, yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I just want to remind everyone about Rhythm on the River this weekend down at Rogers Grove. It should be a great time. I hope the public will attend.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I would like to officially or unofficially congratulate all the people who were appointed to service on our boards. I thought that they were an amazingly diverse and well-qualified group of people, and I am proud to serve a city that inspires the service from so many great folks.
I guess for my council comments, I need a favor from my fellow council members. And Mayor Pro Tem was like, "Oh no!" Tomorrow. So if you will recall, there was a horde of small children from my neighborhood. Among them were 3 of my boys, who called me and the city out because these are my children, and because because they're my children. I don't feel it's appropriate for me to be involved in this process. For you, other people, okay, oh, conflict of interest. No, I just want out. So so tomorrow there's going to be a meeting at my house, and it's at my house because yesterday my children were not home, but the other member kids showed up and knocked on my door about 7 o'clock, 7:30, and wanted an impromptu meeting with the mayor. I invited them in, and after about 2 minutes of listening, I said, wait, this is too close. Here is Tim Waters' personal cell phone number. Call Councilmember Waters. I suggest you refer to him as Dr. Waters, and explained a little bit about our relationship, promised you were a really cool guy, and said that I recommended that you ask for a meeting between him and Harold Dominguez, and that you guys address and air your grievances. And then I got a phone call from those kids today saying that they were coming to my house tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and I was expected to meet with Dr. Waters, and I guess it's Dave Bell who's going to be there instead of the city manager. So that's one city council person. I would prefer, they can use my house, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to attend. So I was wondering if there's other councils, 1 or at least 2, not 3, because we don't have time to post, but is there anyone else who would be willing to listen to these kiddos? All right, Marcia Martin's up. Mayor Pro Tem? Tomorrow at 2. No, you can be 3 as long as the door's open. You can. It doesn't have to be posted if it's 4. It's got to be an open meeting if it's 3, and anybody's willing to come. It's an open meeting. If not, we can do it 2. All right, so we'll do it with 2, and you can think about it. All right. Thank you, Councilmember Martin. Dr. Waters.
Can we make any announcements about the party afterwards?
Yeah,
I mean, you just invited the whole community.
That's Ragin' Kager at the mayor's house.
So what kind of refreshments are there going to
be? No refreshments, no nothing.
So we don't want the paper to report.
Angry children and shovels.
Party at the mayor's house tomorrow.
Party at the mayor's house.
No? All right.
No,
okay.
no party, open meeting. All right, so thank you very much. Councilmember?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Bagley. is David Bell going to?
Protect you?
Pardon me?
Protect you?
No, that's not what I was thinking. Is he going to be well versed on what can be offered to these children?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I just say, I know these kids, good luck.
Okay.
If you'll notice, I rarely ever run from a fight. And peace out, y'all. Deuces. All right. Anything else from City Council? All right. Seeing none, let's go on to City Manager remarks. Anything?
I do have one thing. We wanted to remind council, you all decided to have 2 open forums. Next week is the open forum. To basically will mirror what we did earlier in the year. Just wanted to remind everyone.
Eugene?
No comments, Mayor.
All right. This meeting's adjourned.